You landed on the substance. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, saying, welcome back. We're very happy to have you. Here at The Substance, we're looking to have conversations that help us all better appreciate goodness, truth, and beauty. Previous guests include folks like Isa McCauley, Dr. Karen Swallow Pryor, multi-hyphenate artist Propaganda, Josh Larson of the Film Spotting Podcast, and Caitlin Chess. This week, I have a returning guest and friend of the show back on after 3 or 4 years. It's been quite a while. Alexis Busetti of the That Makes Total Sense podcast. We had Alexis back on, I believe, in 2021, quite a while ago. I had a wonderful conversation with her. Since then, she's done hundreds of episodes, and we've done several. But it was really wonderful catching back up with Alexis and talking about how things are looking, how we are preparing to do the various things that we're engaged in, and kind of hope for the future. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Alexis. Well, Alexis, welcome back. It's great to reconnect after, it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but I'm guessing if we look at it, it will have been a while ago.
No, I checked like right before we came on. I actually have it pulled up because I was like, and I was like, maybe it was like 2023. Philip, this is 2021.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
4 years ago.
The fall of 21. I mean, almost, I guess like 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5.
Still,
Little
that's
bit's
crazy.
changed since then, huh?
Oh my goodness. Can we? I guess we're going to talk about it.
Sure.
What's changed since then. But yeah, I mean, it feels in a lot of ways like a different world from November of 21.
Yeah, it's been it's been quite a ride.
It has been quite a ride. At least I'm hoping we're going to talk about that because I mean, you've always done this, but recently your show has been a lot of movies, and I'm crossing my fingers. I'm like, Philip, don't ask me about anything movie related because I haven't seen anything. I haven't watched anything.
No, you're fine. So I've had different people say, hey, like you should do an only movie show or you should do 2 shows. Like if I had an editor, like now I am doing everything because I lost Trevor. And then I had editor Dave for a little while.
Miss Trevor and Miss Vince tonight.
And I lost editor Dave. So now I'm, for now, a one-man show.
No,
listeners,
that's crazy.
If anybody is really great at editing and just loves it and wants to join the team, like I would love to build the team back up again. But so I didn't want to go bi-weekly. So we're kind of doing like semi-weekly. So we're doing like 3 a month with 1 off.
That's great.
So that I'm not burning myself out.
Yes.
And then I also wanted to put out more than 26 episodes a year. Like I didn't just want to do that, but I knew I couldn't keep up with every week.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like I looked at the recent, I was like, man, he's like throwing him out there.
Well, and I took like an inadvertent, so we'll get right into partial this. Post inauguration, man, I was really just foggy, and like family and work and all my other responsibilities didn't stop. But since I am literally the only person on the Substance team right now, the recruiting guests, scheduling, recording, editing, publishing, promoting, I'm doing all that. Like it just kind of fell by the wayside for about a month and a half, just kind of while I recalibrated. But then like literally every day we're getting hit with nonsense after nonsense, but kind of back on track. I've got a few in the can, and I think what I'm going to do is 2 cinema episodes, 1 regular Substance episode a month, and then either take a week off, or if I have a ton of stuff in the can and I'm doing really good, like I'll put out bonuses. But I'm trying to give myself 3 a month.
No, that's great.
And just take an off week.
Yeah, that's great. Take a week off. If you have something great, throw it out there. If you have like a really good replay, something that's like,
well, I'm at the point now, man, you're crushing it. Cause like I was always impressed with your show, but you've done weekly. Like we relaunched our show in 2020, not far away from when you launched.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
And then we went through our like a couple of Substance iterations that were like not big delays at all in our feed, but like slight speed bumps. But then we went to bi-weekly, and you're almost at 300 now.
We are, but this is because this is not a one-woman show. So as you know, because my husband Seth was
I know
just in
Seth
here,
is I love seeing Seth's updates.
I'm like, he was fixing all of the things. And so it would not be a weekly show if it weren't for Seth. But we have, I mean, of course, just like you, like we have a family, we've got like real jobs and,
Yeah, you're
whatever.
in
And
school, you got grown
school, it's
kids.
all of the things. And I guess, you have to decide, like you have like what's important on the podcast, like what are the things that we want to do. And a few years ago, so we launched, like you said, so similar timing to your relaunch, we launched in September of 2019. And a few years in, I said, I think the hill I will die on is a weekly launch. Like, I mean, a weekly, sorry, not a launch, a weekly drop. Like, I think that is the hill, for now, the hill I will die on. So we have done some replays for sure, because there's just those weeks when you're like, even if I have some recorded, it's like trying to get this thing produced is going to be crazy. So we have done a handful of replays for sure. I try and pick some that I think are relevant, because like you said, there's just stuff happening every day. Sometimes it feels like multiple times a day,
Oh,
every
many times a
hour.
day. Good Lord.
I mean, we could fill a whole show with the things that happened just
Which I
today.
deeply don't want to be that kind of show.
Right. Right, but it's like, yeah, so thank you. I mean, we're trying, we're out here trying, but yeah, so we try and do that, try and do it every month. We are almost at 300, which is wild. Again, we had the whole
That's
Substance
amazing.
crew. We did this in 2021, which I can't believe it was that long ago.
That's crazy.
Um
Well, feel
yeah.
free if you want to have a bonus one day and take a week off and, and do that again.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, we're going to put this in both of our feeds probably, right?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So,
I'll put it together and then I'll send it to you for whenever you want to put it out. Yeah, we're creeping up on 200. We'll probably hit
yeah, I just saw
200
that.
next year.
That's great. And for a while we had real similar guests
Yeah.
too,
We
which
our
was fun.
next substance episode after this will likely be one that you had not too long ago, Liz Charlotte Grant.
Yes. Yes. I am glad
Her
you
new book
mentioned
is so interesting.
it's so great. I'm actually glad you mentioned Liz Charlotte Grant, because earlier when you said after the inauguration, it was just kind of like, "Blah," like
Yeah, her
for
episode,
you.
you guys talked about that on that
We
episode.
because I think it was like,
Is
I don't
that day or the
remember.
next
It
day?
was, yeah, I think it might have been the next day. It was like that week, and I remember like we signed on, and I was like in a ball cap and sweats, and I was like, I am hoping I can do this today. Like it was just like I logged in and was like, I'm just letting you know, I'm feeling real low right now. Like
Well, yeah,
I
no,
am
I mean, you saw our
grieving.
feed. We took a month and a half off after that. Just well, and also, so one of the episode that I was working on while that was happening was like a topic toss up that I had with former editor Dave, and one of the things we talked about was like, how are we gonna like postures and strategies and like how are we gonna handle the next 4 years? And it was just a very just heavy, not and it wasn't even super heavy content. It just like felt like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is definitely a lot. And it's been interesting to see different folks deal with it differently. So like when I signed on with Liz, she was like dressed and she had makeup and her hair was done and like all this, and it's super fabulous. And we don't use the video same as your show, but we record it, and it was funny because each of us, I don't think she would mind me sharing it, or we talked quite a lot about it on the show, I think, but it was kind of like I came in kind of dragging, like I am feeling grieved right now,
Yeah.
whatever. And then for her, it was like, for different people at different times, or whatever, it was kind of like, this is what I needed to do to even get up, is like, okay, I'm going to get myself ready. I'm going to do the, and it was kind of like the opposite of kind of how I was feeling that day, of like, please don't make me get out of bed. I'm just like, I just want to wear my slippers and my ball cap all day and just blah. And she was kind of more the opposite of like, okay, this is what I have
Let's
to
get
do.
it.
Let's get
Let's
it.
face it. Yeah.
Yep.
And I honestly am usually that, but then sometimes on the days where there's like 6 updates, I'm just like, "Oh, come on. What are we doing here?"
I mean,
And then
I
you see
don't,
all the friggin' like, I mean, that was a big part of both of our personal stories and like initial launches. And I mean, I always start like 3 trains of thought at once. Alexis, for listeners who are newer to the show or hadn't listened to your episode, you want to give 1 or 2 minute kind of intro of who you are and how you've kind of come to do what you do now with your show?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't feel prepared for that, but I didn't. Um, I'm pumped to be here, by the way,
I'm
Philip.
pumped to have you back. It's always nice to have a friend back.
Yeah, it's fun. So I um I started my husband and I started my podcast called That Makes Total Sense in September of 2019. Um pri- our tagline is exploring God's generosity and justice. And so this has been something that I have informally been doing, I would say, in my house growing up. We talked a lot about justice, injustices. We talked a lot. My dad has his graduate degree in political science. And so these were just the kinds of things that we talked about in my house growing up. I grew up, though, in the buckle of the Bible Belt, Southern Oklahoma, small town. Where these kinds of things were not really discussed. This wasn't really what was on the minds of my church community, and so that was a little bit of um, a disconnect there, I guess. Fast forward to I graduate college. I have a master's. My first master's degree is in human relations from a public university with a concentration in organizational studies and social justice. And I earned that while I was working as a state caseworker in Oklahoma doing child protective services. And I thought, I part of my story is that for a couple of decades, I would enter into these social justice related spaces and find myself shocked every time that they weren't swarming with Christians.
Yeah.
I was like, what are we doing? Like we're here, we've got this office that is providing, TANF, and we're doing foster care stuff and adoption. We're doing all of these things, and this place is not swarming with Christian workers. I was just like really confused by that. But I was really confused by that several times in several different instances in several different contexts for decades. Then I started the podcast about less than a year before I went back to seminary, which is something I never thought I would do, and earned an MDiv at Fuller. And one of the things that drew me to Fuller Seminary was this focus on justice included in the faith experience. And then now I am still doing the podcast, still talking to folks about the same kinds of things, and have started a PhD program where
And reading a staggering amount of books for your show. Do you still read darn near the whole book
right,
before you
I
talk to your
do. I
people?
still read the whole book before
Listeners,
I
she
talk to
has a
everyone.
weekly show where she has very substantive and detailed conversations with people where she reads their 150 to 300 page book every week. It's nuts.
It's wild. I mean, maybe not every single week is an author, but close. I mean, it
Darn
is.
near.
I interview a ton of authors who are all amazing and wonderful and generous people to just come on. I mean, it's like the most fun thing that I get to
It
do.
rules. I don't think I've ever interviewed an author without reading any of their book, but there's only a few that I've gotten to read the whole book before we had our conversation,
Well, it's funny too. So I'm glad you
especially if
mentioned
it's a
that.
new book.
I'm glad you mentioned that as a podcast host because it's like I think it's kind of like whenever you have something that just is not, I don't know, like it either comes naturally to you or something like that, and then you just kind of think this is just the way it is for everybody. Like
Sure, yeah.
I have a son who's like he just has really good body awareness, and he can skateboard, and he's like he can ski, and
Super
he can,
coordinated.
I mean, yeah, like just all of the things. He's a black belt in taekwondo, and all this, and I'm like, yeah, everybody's body doesn't quite work like that. Like we don't all have the awareness, but he just kind of, he just does it real naturally. And so I'm like, it's one of those things I love reading. And so whenever I often get feedback from authors who are like, "Oh my goodness, it's so great to talk with someone who like has some familiarity with my
Oh, I'm
work, you know, or
sure.
something like that." And I'm like, "Oh, is it?" You know, because I just, think, yeah, this is not it's not the case for them every single time they talk to somebody, which is like, duh, because that's I mean, yeah, we're all just out here doing the best we can, right? And
Well,
this
no,
just
because they're
happens to be
PR
something I like.
people, like the people at the publishers who reach out to me, like we're in both in a nice position. Like I don't think either of us like have people on our show that we don't want to talk to or
Right.
who
Yeah,
we aren't interested in.
for
But
sure.
like I pick people who I like. I reach out to publishers, say, "Hey, I see you have this book coming out next season. I'd love to get a copy and talk to them." And a lot of times they'll send it to me, or they'll reach out and be like, "Hey, we've got somebody to
Yeah.
talk to." But I'm sure they're doing that to so many outlets, and so many people just want to have content. They'd be like, "Oh, what's the topic? Oh, this great, have them on." And then they'll be like, "Tell us about all of like your area. What is it exactly?" And then I'm sure, especially for like long form, like if you're doing a 30 to 60 minute
Yeah.
session with somebody and they literally like barely read the dust jacket, like that could be
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah, 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 it's funny, like, I think of my kids sometimes when like, I'm really not great with names, and so they're always like, "Yeah, but that's when you just say, 'Hey, how do you spell your name again?'" I'm like, "Yeah, that works until the guy's name is John," or something, but it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, what's your area? Tell me about that, yeah, your project. What is that again?" Frantically takes notes.
So I whenever I listen to your show, I'm always impressed both as a listener and a fellow podcaster. Just the work that I really like reading too, but man, the ones that are out for a little while, what I do the best with, honestly, because I have a lot of drive time in my job. So if I can be like the fourth or fifth outlet to interview them, like after it's been out for a week or two, if the audiobook is out, I can crank through that in a couple days and then
Yes.
have it all down. But
Yes.
usually when I sit down in the evening, if it's not watching a movie for myself or the show or editing a show or spending time with the wife, like I'll usually read, but it'll be for like, I don't know, 30 to 45 minutes and then I'll go to
Yeah.
bed. Like I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
cranking through chapters and chapters of like a seriously like thought out deal.
Yeah, no, it's good. I also like to occasionally, I don't do this very often, but every once in a while, I'll catch an episode where they've already been interviewed with someone else that's already been released. And then I'm kind of
Sure.
like, oh, yeah, like what are they talking about? Whatever. So I did that with yours with uh, KSP way back in the
Nice.
day.
I
Yeah.
need to have her back. Her new book sounds interesting.
Yeah. Remind me, she does have a new one coming
I think
out.
it's about work.
Oh, nice.
I believe. I could be wrong. I'm going to cut that out if it's wrong. I'm going to check it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, but I've also talked to her about coming on for some movie ones as well.
Oh, that'd
She's
be
always
fun.
very like game and open. I just I need to present her with something and then get on her schedule, and over the last with all the different things changed, that's just been hard. But yeah, she was a wonderful guest. I love talking with
Yes.
her.
Yes, 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 yes.
And
She is so
I've
great.
really enjoyed like talking about our faith journeys. Like mine, I didn't have the exact same one you did, but the questions of why isn't the church doing more is something I very much resonate with. And on that note, like I have really enjoyed KSP's Dr. Karen Swallow Pryor, listeners, if you don't know, just her transparency and humility, kind of as she's gone through her journey of trying to stay and make it better, maybe being in denial a little bit, and then here's here's the good stuff about it, to just, hey, wait, actually a lot of this is very broken and problematic, and like where do I fit? And I really hope she continues to, and I'm sure she will, but I mean it's just been encouraging to see for somebody of her stature in that world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. She's very level-headed. She brings a lot of wisdom uh to the space for sure. And yeah, I think you may have said it, open-minded. I just feel like she's someone who is not going to like beat down someone else's perspective just because it doesn't align fully with hers. And that's refreshing, especially in this age, this culture right now.
Well, and I was thinking about I went back and re-listened to our own Substance episode with, Esau McCulley on Lent, just because 'cause we're in that Lenten season, and was
Nice.
just struck by what he said, and I feel like for the most part, like, we were on our way out of that world when the Substance started, but we were very critical and thoughtful about all those things. Like, one of the things Esau said is like, "Yeah, I just entered public space a lot later, and I just knew who I was and the problems I didn't wanna have." So, like,
Mm.
I just stayed out of a lot of the areas where I knew I wouldn't be welcome or there would be unnecessary difficulties and kind of carved my own lane. And I was like, man, that was really smart.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I like that a lot. I really enjoy Esau's work too. He's doing some great
Yeah, I
stuff.
need to listen to his memoir that came out a little while ago.
Oh, I don't know if I realized he'd even released a
He
memoir.
did.
I
It's
love
like
memoirs.
it's memoir, but also a lot of theology in there as well. It sounded great. He was working on it 2 years ago when Lent came out. It's come out, and I don't think enough people have talked about it. I was going to reach out to have him back on to talk about that and his children's books. He loves he loves whenever anyone asks him about his children's books. And his show is interesting now too. I forgot he's got his own
Yeah.
Holy Post show,
That's right. Yeah,
which we
that's
both have
right.
had some of the Holy Post people on before.
Yeah, Holy Post is one that I subscribe to, and if I'm being honest, there are gosh, the 2 podcasts that I listen to most consistently right now are New York Times The Daily because I
Boy, oh
really
boy.
love that show, but also I, like, feel like it's a necessity, and that's anyway, that's great. We could talk about that if you wanted to, but I like the long form of that, but also, I listen to Up First, NPR's Up First, because I'm like, if I don't get anything else today, I've got, like, 15 minutes getting ready
Nice.
in the morning or whatever, and I can know at least the headlines that I need to know today, but as we mentioned, those can change midday.
That's very true. So yeah, no, I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was in the 3.5, 4 years since we last had you on, and you've done hundreds of episodes. Um, like, what has changed? Like, what have you learned? How have you seen the arc of kind of the unfortunate downward arc of many cultural cultural things that unfortunately are tied to a lot of like spiritual communities that we maybe used to be affiliated with, and the new spiritual communities. Whenever I tune into your show, I just love the variety of voices, and I know myself and many others who are like, okay, like there are plenty of places in the church where we're probably not welcome and we have no interest being a part of, but that's not the entirety of it. So what has changed, and what have you learned, and where have you kind of found encouragement in those last few years, kind of as quite a lot has changed?
Oh my gosh. That's such a great question. And I am fighting everything in me not to shoot questions at you. So just so you know,
Hey,
Philip, I am
after
like
this, feel free to turn it around. That's fine.
I'm like, okay, I'm sitting in my same chair with my same headphones and my same mic, and I am not the host tonight. So I'm readjusting and recalibrating myself. Okay, like let
I'll
it go.
tell you what, you hit it and then feel free to turn it around, especially if we're putting it on both of our feeds. That's only fair.
Um, yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just like, "Oh my goodness, I'm never on the other side of the question asking." But that's so great. It feels like a hot seat. Um, I think I think what has been wild for me is so thinking back, we chatted in November of 21, I think is what my feed said. So somewhere around there. And I think prior to that, I think where I was I was like, there was a time, and now I'm trying to think of all of the elections because help us, there have been so many, it feels like at this point. But there was this season where I was kind of like, if if Trump doesn't get elected, and so this would have been after the 2020 election when we talked, but it was kind of like, oh, if Trump doesn't get elected, then um, you know, things will calm down. Things will kind of cool it, meaning in some of these church communities, spiritual spaces, whatever. And I think we've seen, obviously, that was not the case. We could see in
Yeah.
21 that that wasn't the case, in 22 and 23, and continuing that that wasn't the case, but that really things ramped up in a way that I was not anticipating. But I think people who were more perceptive or had a better understanding of history and the politics probably did foresee coming. Um, Anyway, and then kind of leading up to this election that we just had and the place where we are now, I think I have found myself what I've said recently, I've found myself saying this a lot recently is I am continually surprised and I'm irritated at myself that I'm surprised.
Completely resonate with that. Well, and like I was one of the ones, not like in a haughty way, like I knew I feel like things would calm down some, but I was also very skeptical. I was like, feels like the genie's kind of out of the bottle on a lot of it. Like you can't go, especially like if you're talking like November of 21, if January 6th happens, like you
Right.
can't just go back with so many people who
Yes.
are like who would claim faith. And not only would claim faith, who have like melded their political and religious identities together so hard that not only are they thinking it's okay, like they're literally putting God's name on so many of these things. And not just January 6th, but that's like the most that was at the time one of the most egregious ones. Still's a pretty bad
Right.
one, but who
Yeah.
even knows now? Like all these things, it's like it's kind of hard to go back to business as usual after they're like, let's overturn the election and hang the vice president. Like that's
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. This is not just going to be Tuesday as usual when everybody goes back to the
But a
Capitol.
lot of people just went back
Of
to work.
course.
Like they flew home and then they're like, what? The FBI is investigating me. Like I was just
Like,
exercising my rights. It's like people just went nuts. I mean, people have been going nuts, but it's like I was like, how do we come together actually? Not in a like trite way, but how do we genuinely like forge a future together with people who are kind of on that wavelength?
well, I think this is kind of the question of the day. And what I have seen from a lot of, I would say, experts in their fields who are also Christians trying to navigate a Christian space faithfully in the ways that they know how, and with their communities. And they have been saying things that I would agree with, which is this is very different.
Yeah.
So, meaning this isn't just, oh, is it Bush or Gore? Like, let's have coffee if we're talking this is Bush or Gore. Like, let's have a conversation. This is something that but this administration is not that. This administration is very, very different. This administration, I remember again, it's like one of those things like I'm still surprised every time. I don't know why, but I follow a few accounts. Okay, I probably shouldn't say this. I follow a few accounts on Instagram of kind of conservative Christian influencer type people.
Okay. Kind of keep an eye on
Because
them kind of
yeah,
deal?
I just wanna keep my finger on the pulse, yeah, because I'm like, I realize the algorithms are never going to show me these kinds of things otherwise, and I'm just kind of curious, and these are, like, thoughtful people, all of this stuff, but again, I end up being really shocked, and there have been some messages that have been put out by official POTUS accounts, obviously official White House accounts, where I'm like, these things are egregious.
Like
Like
literally like
like
totally nuts.
totally nuts,
Totally nuts. Like
totally
the frog
egregious.
was boiled a long time ago. People
I
like
mean,
I don't know how we get desensitized. Like I truly don't know how
egregious.
genuinely otherwise like um, it's hard because I mean there's the historical precedent of like how do good people stand by and da 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 da. But like people I know who are not stupid and who are not like maliciously evil. How do these people observe? Oh, maybe their algorithm isn't feeding it. Maybe like, maybe they're not seeing all of these things, but how are they observing what is happening and being actively or okay with it, or okay with it enough to like be unbothered?
Oh, I'm talking about people reposting some of this stuff.
Woof. No,
And
I've seen
then
that as well. Oh, gee.
and then,
That's
like,
the worst. You're like, how?
like,
Like,
I'm
literally,
thinking,
how?
like, I'm thinking of one that I saw that was one of these egregious things. I don't remember if it was White House or POTUS, but it was one of these egregious things that I wouldn't have seen unless it had been reposted. And then it was basically like, kind of like,
Like one of the
you
truth
don't have to
social posts or
it
whatever?
was like, you don't have to say it that way. Basically, like, you don't have to be such a jerk about it, but also rah rah, like, also this is great, like, this is good policy. And I'm like,
Woof.
yeah, I mean, it's so tough. And so I think, the question of like, how do we do this? How do we, not some trite kind of unity, but how, I'm like, I honestly don't know, because what we have going on right now isn't like other times in our country where we can just say, let's just, agree to disagree and let's have coffee. Like,
Yeah.
there are very, very serious consequences to just going along with what's happening right now,
Well, and
or
that's the thing too. Like,
promoting
you
what's
don't want to
happening right now.
always be at 10 with your messaging, because, like, I mean, that's annoying, like, practically, but like, two, you also get tuned out. So it's not, you don't
Right.
want to use the strongest language every time, but it's like, over, like, you see all the damage and destruction and like unnecessary error, and it's not even error, like, you're like, are they just literally trying to destroy everything? And people who I see who are not multi-billionaires and business owners going like, hooray. It's
Mhm.
like, hooray what are you talking about?
So
You're not a
this
billionaire. You're not being helped, especially people of faith. You're like, yay, all these like like all the people who are most in need are getting things taken away from them. Yay. Like, what in the world are you talking about?
Right. In what universe? And the messaging always on a
And all
10.
this
This
stuff is forever. Like, I am regularly harassing my Missouri representatives. Like, whenever these crazy things happen, I'm tagging them in it and be like, are you guys okay with this? Like, I'm going to assume I'm looking forward to your statement against this, or like, this is all on the record, guys. Like, you're going to be in the documentary in 10 years. Like, when all this is over, like, are you really cool with doing nothing or
I
supporting
mean,
this?
well, my representative, I saw a
Oof. Yeah.
tweet the other day. I mean, let's not, right? I mean, like,
You're
pick
in
a
Texas. Yeah.
representative, pick a our governor,
Yikes.
but one of our senators, what put a picture of himself, Philip. I'm like, really? He put a picture of himself on social media. I think it was Twitter, um, of him reading The Art of the Deal. I'm like, art, this is what we're doing right now. But yes, this is what we're doing. We're
Yeah.
putting a picture of ourselves doing Art of the Deal. Messaging, real quick. I had a thought on that. You can't be on 10 all the time. This was hilarious to me. I mean, the documentary was not hilarious. The documentary was great. But my husband texts, does a little, we have a few of these group chats with our friends, and he texts one, and his message was something like, Rick Steves out here just doing the Lord's work. And Rick Steves, apparently in like 2018 or something like that, puts out a one of his travel specials, as he's been doing since, as my husband said, before it was cool to do that. Rick Steves has been out here doing the travel documentary thing. Um, but he put one out, a European historical tour of fascism. And so it's like an hour, I think it's like an hour long. And what I loved about it, and I just couldn't help but crack up after I was debriefing with my husband after we had each watched it, And I was like, but what was funny to me is the way that Rick Steves is, like his expressions. He's just smiling, and so he's like, and when, and so I can't, like do his voice or whatever, but he's like, and then as Hitler rose to power, and you're like, oh my goodness, like he's just like, he's smiling, like he's telling you about, the most recent cheesecake that he got at at a Paris bakery or whatever. And I'm like, no, he's just like stating the facts and he's showing the reels, as you're saying, like here they are. Here's the videos, here are the books, here it is.
Yeah.
He just lines it all out. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting in it was that he said fascism, the guys that he was interviewing, is like it just has very simple answers for very complex problems. And I was like,
I mean, does that remind us of
well, there
our
you go.
religious upbringing a little bit, perhaps, too?
Oh, well, too. Yeah.
And
I
that's,
mean,
I mean, yeah,
I
the
hadn't even
more
thought
I
of
go,
that
it's
part.
not like I get how they go together. It just is so infuriating and heartbreaking how well they go together.
I
Like,
mean, say that
intellectually,
part
I get
again.
it
I just
more.
hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, no, like the people who idolize certainty and strong leaders and like definite clear answers where we are right and the others are wrong, like it makes total sense how those two things go together. It just sucks.
Yeah, it's those simple, yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. The simple answers for the complex problems. I mean, I was obviously thinking about, the administration and
Sure.
how, nobody else has been able to solve anything, but it's actually very simple. All you have to do is XYZ. And you're like, really? All you have to do is just shut down the Department of Education. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's actually
all you
very
have to do is
simple.
like tariff farmers into the ground.
That's right. It's fine. It's very simple. And there's, all the
Put
leaders before.
RFK in charge of healthcare. That'll be cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be great. And none of the leaders before could do it because they were overcomplicating it and making, whatever, but it's really, quite simple. But I think, I don't even want to think about that bridge. I don't even want to think
Sorry there.
about
Yeah,
that
opened
thread.
up Pandora's box. Yeah, like that's something I've thought about a lot, and it's just so heartbreaking and annoying. But anyway,
What do you think? Okay, you said
sorry
I
to
could turn the
yeah,
tables.
turn
You said I
around.
could
What do you
turn the
got?
tables. I mean, but what do you think? And I will preface this by telling about an experience that I have kind of semi regularly. So, but my question is, how do we come together, faith communities and things like that? Because I'm trying to tell you that white American evangelicalism has a problem. They have a deep they have a deep problem. I was listening to a podcast the other day where they called people triple trumpers, which I had never heard that term before, but like 16, 20, and 24, right?
Yep. I mean, I hadn't
Um,
heard that term, but I was like, oh yeah.
yeah, I
Especially the
mean, so
people who I can a teeny bit. I don't forgive the first one exactly, but like I can get how you'd be swindled. But the
sure.
second time, after 4 years of like we have the receipts of like the dumbest stuff being like, I'd like more of that, please.
I'd like more. So that's my question, but I will say this has been my experience, and I'm gonna try and say it because it's not I don't I do a lot of like internal processing, so I haven't externally processed this very much. But um and we already said earlier that I live in Texas. I live in Houston though, which has typically generally goes blue, but it's not the whole city. So there are parts definitely in my part of the city that are pretty red. So for a while, I was, driving my youngest to elementary school in the mornings, and I would pass by some houses that had a lot of uh, Democratic signage in their yards, and then some that had some very, very red signs in their yard, including one. And I'm saying this as a mixed Hispanic, as a Mexican American. I would say this, including one that literally read, "Stop the invasion, secure our borders." Right. So it's got signs up for Trump, obviously, any other red, folks that were on the ballot, and then it's got stop the invasion.
Yikes.
And yeah, it's,
Totally
fun and terrifying.
normal,
Totally normal, right?
historically unbothered. Like there's no historical baggage to that kind
Right.
of slogan.
Nothing like that. So every time, and then of course my cynical self, I kind of look at it and I say to myself, "Thank you." Like, "Thank you for putting that out there."
Sure.
And I get that this is like a binary way to look at it, but it's hurtful. Um, but then I think, but there are a lot of folks, and I know them, I grew up with them, I've been to Bible study with them and all of that, that might say a similar thing if someone, I had Harris stickers on my vehicles. And they might look at that and say to me in their heads, "Well, thank you." Thank you that now I know kind of everything I need to know about you or what type of
Sure.
person you are because you would have the audacity to put something on here. I will say I'll throw this out there because Harris made reproductive rights a pretty big part of her campaign, and that is something that historically you and I could both do the math on that and go back in the history of when that became a thing for white evangelicals, but they might look at that and basically say, "I know what I need to know about you because you
Sure.
have a Harris sticker on your car or whatever it is." And so I just think like, and then I stop myself because I think, but I don't really know everything I need to know about that person by this. But at the same time, the stop the invasion sign is pretty hurtful. So those are some of the things that I struggle with that I don't have answers for. So I ask you, and maybe even if you have anything in your context that would be helpful. You're in Missouri. I
Yeah.
think I'm like middle America. This is, I mean, there's,
I mean, yeah, KC is super diverse.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's a lot of um yeah, no, there's a lot of all sorts of stuff here. Like there's a lot of progressive people. There's a lot of wonderful nonprofits, but it's also middle America. And like it's such an interesting mix because with my job, I'm in sales and marketing. I'm in a number of chambers of commerce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rubbing shoulders with all sorts of people, business owners, sometimes elected officials. Like I'm around people who are of influence, and it is really interesting to see like because I mean I know a lot of times the way people talk, like sometimes that does happen to me. Sometimes people are just off-putting, and I can be like, yeah, like I don't really need to mess with you. But I would say on a more like personal, relational level, and this kind of goes back to the episode I had with editor Dave that took me a month and a half to edit. Like I genuinely think that with individuals, like your normal everyday person, like not a CEO, not a politician, not somebody who's trying to like gun for one of the top spots on the side of oppression, like a regular person. Um we live in not like a super poor area, but we decided to buy a house, and then COVID hit, and then all the houses in the nice areas like tripled in value. So we moved to a town in Missouri that has more affordable stuff. There's a lot of great stuff here, but I'll say that our best neighbor, kind of in our group of houses, he had some rugged signs and flags. Like when it was like when the election was getting hot and ugly, like he had some profane and ugly stuff up on his car and on his flags, but like literally anytime we needed anything, he was there. Sometimes he would mow our yard without like I never asked him to do anything, but sometimes he'd be like, "Hey, like I know you're working a lot, like, and I'm already on my riding mower, like I'll come and I'll mow your yard for you." Like he's our best neighbor. So like I think there's a lot of hope on the individual level when we can kind of take rhetoric out of it. Um and I'm personally not an organizer, and I really, really, really kind of don't want to be. um, I'm happy to like platform others, and I mean, I'll do what I need to do. And I feel like with my makeup in the net, who knows what's going to happen in the coming years and decades. I really don't want to run for or do anything, but like, I think holding the higher ups accountable
not being super, and you don't need to be like being winsome is not the number one goal when people are promoting and doing evil things and harming people. On the other hand, like, you also want to try to have your message heard as much as possible. So it's, I kind of feel like there's a bit of a balance, but I think it's regularly and doggedly attacking the like structures and the people holding up the structures of these bad things, while trying to be as loving and relationally open as you can to the people who have kind of fallen under the influence of these things. And it's definitely not easy all the time. And I wouldn't just say that patently. Like, if somebody's like, oh, my family member, my neighbor, my coworker is like super duper mega and obnoxious, I'm not saying, oh, like really try to be their best friend. Like, I'm not saying that, but like, be kind where you can. Like, don't give them, like, don't make it personal. And that's something that, on the other side, like, don't always make it like, oh, they are evil, they are stupid, they are terrible. Like, there are definitely evil, stupid, terrible people out there who are running these things, but a lot of the normal citizens who are going about their days, working their jobs, trying to take care of their families, all that stuff, like, they have a really, really bad informational diet. And usually yelling at somebody is not a proven way to help them change that. So I'm more hopeful than I'm not hopeful usually. I mean, depends on like the deluge of negative crap I read, but I do think that, and that's kind of our like little slogan at the Substance has changed a couple times over the years, and now it's something like promoting conversations around goodness, truth, and beauty. Like, we're not trying to beat people over the head with dogma or theology or a point of view. It's it's putting, like, inviting somebody to consider the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I think you can do that in a lot of ways relationally. And I really do try, like, practically, like with me and my online presence and in my in person, I kind of don't care what people think about me sometimes, for better and worse. Like, my wife and close friends sometimes laugh at it. Like, I kind of, what do we, I forget what their joke is about me, but yeah, like, I kind of don't care, like, for better and worse. So I don't try to upset people. Like, I don't usually like try to get spicy and like start conversations where there's going to be disagreement all that often. But like, when people say things, sometimes I'll just like ask them a question, because a lot of times they're in such echo chambers where they're not thinking, they're hearing things and then repeating them. So sometimes when I feel like it's not crazy tense, like, and I'll hear someone say something, like, I'll just ask them a question. Like, this is a real thing that happened. I don't know if you remember several years ago, if this was a national thing or if different certain cities had it, but do you remember when, and I'll be general, I'll be vague with this story, but do you remember when there were the fake stories about teachers putting litter boxes in classrooms for students that identified as animals? Like, this
Oh
was like a
gosh.
fake
No.
story, and all these MAGA senior citizens were getting angry about it. But I was at a gathering with a lot of people we knew, some people we didn't, but who, where my wife and I were definitely in the minority, ideological wise there. And one of the person who was closer to my age range got on. He's like, "Oh, did you hear about all these like litter boxes they're putting in classrooms?" He's like, "They're even doing it here in Kansas City." And I take out my phone and I was like, "Oh yeah, like what schools are those in?" And immediately he goes, maybe it's not a true story. I don't know. Who knows?" Like, literally, it
Right.
like, he was furious about
Right.
this, like, ideologies that were being catered to, that was just sickening. And literally I was like, "Oh, where is that happening?" Just because I was gonna check, and he says, "I don't know, maybe it's not happening." Like, So I think that there is a lot of power in like like pushing back with curiosity and like humility.
No, I'm glad you mentioned curiosity. I think I have been
Because a lot of them have
trying.
never had to like they know the things, they can repeat them, but they've never had to explain them.
Right. And I've been like trying to cultivate that in myself because I'm like generally a curious person. But when things kind of irritate me, or I feel like, I'm on the right side of some issue and somebody comes at me and I feel like you're definitely on the wrong side of this issue, my curiosity like gets shut down, I'm like, actually, I have no questions for you. I'm like, no, this is what I do. I ask questions. Like, how do my questions disappear, when that comes? I had a conversation with a professor. I've never had him in class, but I met him on campus a year or two ago. And I'm trying to think now if I don't remember his specialty. I don't think he's from the psych school, but maybe he's leadership or something. And I would say something and he just said, say more, say more. And so I just borrowed that from him because sometimes I'm like, I don't really understand anything that you just said right now. And sometimes in my head, it's like, I don't understand how you could say any of the things that you just said right now, but say more. Like you said, like, well, like which schools, it's like that. Sometimes it can like shut it down like that of like, oh yeah, I actually don't really know. And then sometimes you end up figuring out if it's a really kind of deep held conviction for someone, like, where did that thing come from? Like they might engage with you on that of like where, where something came from for them. Sometimes I agree with you. Often it is, we just repeat what we hear. But sometimes it might be there's like something behind that. The other thing that I try to keep in mind when I'm thinking about like this unity piece or the relational piece or the door the sign in the yard doesn't say everything I need to know. So I appreciate you telling me about your neighbor. That was great. I've had similar experiences and also seen similar experiences that just I love it and they blow my mind. But something I also keep in mind is a lot of people, and I would say probably for the most part, people like you and I, and maybe some of our community around us, we're like not the norm. And what I mean by this is all of us are just like we're trying to just like get from A to B. We're like feeding our kids and hanging out with our family and doing this kind of thing. And truthfully, I have to remember sometimes that this kind of thing, like keeping up with politics and some of these like real nitty-gritty current events, like it is just not of interest to
It's so much
many
easier to
people.
like, yeah, it's so
It's
much easier
boring,
to not ask the questions because it's a lot of work to be like, well, what are the arguments? Who's saying what? Like, and now purposefully, a lot of very bad actors have made it purposefully very hard to
Yes.
like find primary sources or once there is a mass of people who just have a thing in their head, it is near impossible to prove it to them that it's not true. It's very easy to like to plant an idea in someone's head and very, very hard to like take that idea out.
Oh no, it 100% is. And I'm like probably I mean, I think NPR is great, but a lot of people it may not be their first preset, like for me it's my first preset and like for a lot of people it's just not, like and I think like there's no shade, when it comes to that. Like I have I often on my podcast will talk about conversations I've had with my dad. Like NPR is probably his number one preset. My mom is not going to be offended that I'm telling you she will never have it on NPR unless she's in the car with my dad. She's not interested. She's not
But
looking at
yeah,
it.
and
She's not
I
listening
get it.
to
Like
it.
life is hard. Like and all these things are making our lives harder. And I understand why many people would be like, you know what, like I don't really want to spend my time where I'm not working or trying to feed myself for my kids, like diving into that and thinking deeply about that. Like That makes total sense,
Yeah, I'm
as
not
it
there.
were.
What else you got, Philip?
Well, I mean, it's been quite a while since I've had you on, and I've listened to a handful of your shows over the last few years. I would love to hear, like, what are some of the standout moments or guests or resources from your guests that you're like, this could potentially be an all-timer, or I would really commend this person or their work, or even just like if somebody shared like a little insight from some of their work that's really stuck with you. What are some things that have stuck with you over the last few years since we've talked?
Oh gosh.
You're reading a book a week, so take a second if you.
I am. I am. Let me think. So one of them, I would say, Karen Swallow Prior. She came on the show. Now I'm almost as bad with book titles as I am with people names. So we can. I mean, I'm sure we can look up her title and put it in there later, right? We'll put it in the notes. But she came on to talk about. She had a book on like evangelical values and how a lot of them basically have come from this like Victorian, set of values that was really,
The
really,
Evangelical Imagination.
there you go, something like this, right?
That was
Yes,
really
evangelical
good.
imagination. It was so good, right? And I think for me that one, so I have maybe three. So that's one. The reason for that one is that it helps us understand that the things that we have just assumed always were have origin stories in our faith. And I think that is super important because in the kinds of faith cultures that I know you and I have been part of at different times in our lives in different contexts, a lot of things, like you mentioned earlier, there's certainty, but a lot of things are just kind of presented as this is the way it is, and a lot of things come back to this is the way it is, and then it's kind of similar to the conversation we're just having about news, and it's like this is the way it is because the Bible says that, and you're like, the Bible
Yeah.
doesn't actually say that, and then B, no, it's not. It was that way because these were the cultural values that we inherited from something that didn't even have anything to do with faith, but we just melded them together. And so I think that what Karen's text and that episode really like shines a light on some of the things that we like think have always been in our faith, and then we can see, oh, this actually had a starting place, and that doesn't mean you have to drop it, but it also doesn't mean you have to keep it. I think you can make an informed choice based on where did this come from. Do I want to keep this or not? It's like I was having a conversation with another guest recently about or I was maybe it was one of the books I was reading. It's like you might have some of these things in your house and you're kind of like, I don't really know where this came from, but I like this, or I don't really know where this came from and I didn't. Um, and then you get to make a choice. It was actually a conversation at school, but it's like, but then you get to make a choice, and you can make a more informed choice if you kind of know where those came from. So I think this is totally off the top of my head, but that would be one for sure. Um, Another one, I had an author on Houstonian named Fu Lu. And again, cannot remember the title. I'll get you these, Philip. But he talked a lot about Eastern Christianity and Eastern Christian thought, which
Which I'm
again,
a
kind of,
lot more interested in learning about. It was always painted to me as something spooky and bad growing up.
yeah, yeah, right. And I think, but it's kind of the same reason, but just take it back further in history than the
Yeah.
than the Karen conversation. Is like, we have all of these things that we've assumed in Western Christianity. These are the things. And then you go, oh, yeah, but are they? And there's like this entire world of Christians who actually has a slightly different or maybe very different perspective or paradigm, on this. And, you could go into all of that of like, why do we do things this way? Why do Eastern Christians do things another way? But I really and we talked a lot about atonement theories in that conversation
Well,
too.
Trevor would have loved that.
I am not a big fan of PSA, penal substitutionary atonement theory. That is not my favorite, and we talked about that with Fulu. But it just gives you a thing. Like I said, you don't have to say, okay, I'm going to leave this. If this is something you really like, it's something that resonates with you, it's something that helps you connect with God. I'm not saying leave it. But it is interesting to go back and say, but why? Why do we think about the crucifixion in this way? Why do we think about atonement in this way? What does the Bible really say about atonement? All of that. So I think that would be one. Um, and then I just noticed a friend of mine, I haven't even told him yet, but I was checking some stuff when I was loading up the episode yesterday for the drop this week. And I was like, oh my goodness, one of my episodes with my friend Colin Cornell hit like number one listens of all time. And I was like,
Oh, shoot.
oh,
Okay.
right. Yeah, right. Because usually I don't know how it is in your catalog, but I'm
I
like,
love
the
checking that every
older,
now and then.
but I'm like, the
Sometimes to
older
see which
episodes.
older ones that will pop will
Yeah.
last week we had I don't know, a ton of people listen to this random one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
It
was
is.
like,
It
I guess
is.
some group chat found it. I don't know what.
I'm always where I'm like, did someone just like leave their player on, and then it just like keeps going and going and going, and it's just
Yeah.
like the next
It
episode,
is
next
really
episode.
funny when that
It
happens.
is. It's like you get this random peak, but he came on, so we didn't talk about atonement theories, but he actually has a book coming out in the fall that I'm got a little sneak peek of, and I've just started to read. But we had a preliminary conversation about it on an article that he wrote on. Let me see if I can say it, because now I've got the intro to his book in my head. But on the incarnation as reparative work, but he takes another take and says like communion or fellowship. So kind of what is God's work in the world, and our current paradigm from missiologists and theologians like Christopher Wright say we have um this drama. We have a creation, fall, redemption, consummation, and this is it.
Sure.
And so God's work in the world is all based on repair, God's reparative work. But Colin questions that and says, what about the fellowship piece of it? Not that repair isn't a thing, but repair will have an end. Like something will eventually become fixed, like it will become repaired. And then what? And so what about God's work in the world as communal, as fellowship? Like God just really wants to be with God's people. So anyway, I've probably really butchered that. Don't listen to that part, Colin. Where I can't
No, that was good.
remember
That is
everything that we
something
talked
I
about,
think
but
listeners of ours and yours who are still engaged in and committed to somewhat happily, like forging forward and figuring out their faith identities. I think stuff like that is so valuable and so helpful, especially for people who are raised in you can only think about these things.
right.
Here are the questions, here are your answers, there you go. like like faithful Christians around the world and in the past have been asking these questions for a long time, and it is edifying to look at what various people have said about these things.
Right. And it doesn't have to be scary. I mean, I think that's a place where I kind of lived for a long time, was like
Oh yeah, that's where
this.
we were told to live.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Be scared of getting it wrong or else you're going to hell forever. That really was the threat.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, there's maybe something scarier than hell, but I don't really know what it is.
I
I
mean,
mean,
eternal conscious torment for the people who were taught that is pretty unsettling.
it's pretty unsettling. Like, yeah, damnation and you can't do any. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's very scary. But I think that entering into some of these spaces, and I think you hit it, is like faithful Christians have been thinking about, talking about these things for centuries. We have some things that we've inherited. We have some things that communally we've forgotten. We have some things that we've put on the side. But it's okay to to explore those things. Oh, I have one more. Can I have one
Yeah,
more?
please.
I mean, I have so many more. Like you said, we're almost at 300, but I had Dr. Amy Jill Levine on the podcast, who
Rings a
is a
bell. I like you have so many people. Like there was a time where like everybody you're on was like, oh yeah, like their publisher reached out to me or oh I saw their thing. Like now, because I'm still in that world some, but not all day every day. So I like your show has even helped like turn me on to like different people and their works, which is great.
well, she is one
Okay.
that you need to know. She is a Jewish New Testament scholar. And the way that she describes, I've heard her describe herself, and she did it on my show as well, is her words. She said, I'm a Jew, not a Messianic Jew. So she is
Okay.
not a Christian. She does not profess to be a Christian. But her most recent book that we talked about
Amy,
is
are you
Amy
following her or
Jill.
not?
I don't even know if she's on
Oh, on the things.
Instagram or
Okay,
anything.
I'll
Yeah.
just Google her.
Yeah. Amy Jill Levine, Levine. She's at Vanderbilt. Um,
Yeah,
and
she might not be on Instagram then.
she yeah, I think it's called Jesus for Everyone. So she does a lot of work around
Yes,
Jesus. Obviously,
2023.
she's a New Testament scholar. So obviously she does a lot of work around Jesus. She does a lot of work around first century Judaism. And one of the things that she often says, and this is like a whole different tangent that we don't have to go down, but I think it's an important one just to throw out there, is she often says, you don't have to make Judaism look bad to make Jesus look good,
I like
which
that.
is something that we see in Christian circles a lot.
A lot.
If you want to like clickbait, if you want to like, ruffle some feathers, like, or even if you don't, you're just a preacher who is used to hearing these kinds of things, you're just going to call somebody a Pharisee, and it's like that's going to make somebody, like check themselves and all this stuff. You're like, okay, calm down. Like, calm down, because it's really, it's anti-Jewish, it's anti-Semitic, these kinds of things. There's a lot of other examples, but one of the things she also says, and I would say, this is a word for the Christian progressive left, is, we're out here trying to make Jesus a radical. And she's like, yeah, Jesus was in his context of first century Judaism. So again, you don't have to make Judaism look bad to make Jesus look good. The things he was doing was not out of the realm of the context that he was living in. But we don't see that. We don't know that because we don't understand the history of first century Judaism and all these kinds of things. But she, thinks Jesus was a great guy, good teacher, all this kind of stuff, did great things. But just helps us. I think she talks to Christians a lot. Helps us put it in context. She did a Theo Ed talk. I'm trying to remember. It was one of the TED off branches, I think, offshoots.
Okay.
And it was um on basically what we were just talking about, like this eternal damnation, this idea of eternal damnation. But she starts off by telling, a story in that episode, or in that talk of, how that had happened to her. She's really a hilarious woman. So she tells this very sad story in a very hilarious way about, how, she had dated a Christian whose parent had basically damned her to hell because she was Jewish. And then she kind of goes and talks about the sheep and the goats and all this stuff, but as a New Testament scholar anyway, it's fabulous. And I'll get you the
Interesting.
link for all of that too.
I'll
But
check that
anyways,
out.
she's really great. The episode with her, she's a wonderful teacher. And so that was really fun to have someone on the podcast talking about Jesus who is not a Christian. It was great.
I like that a lot. I look forward to listening to that one and maybe checking out her book if there's some audiobooks there.
Yeah. I'm sure there probably is, but yeah, it was a great one. She in that book covers a lot of kind of current topics on kind of like almost like a what would Jesus do? How would Jesus, approach? But
Yeah.
yeah, but she covers some of the current topics that are floating around culturally these days. And yeah, it was great.
Well, yeah, I will try to find the links to those specific things and put some of those in the show notes there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, there's a million more, so those are just the ones that come up the top of my head
So that's
immediately.
our final segment is substance shoutouts, and we kind of half did it there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you are reading, watching, listening to outside of that you've either been edified by or just really found fun and enjoying that you want to say, hey, check this out?
Okay. Yes. Um, I have. I'll say the three shows that we're watching right now
I love it.
because, well, it's not a movie, so maybe it'll be kind of close, but
No, go
also
for it.
because my husband and I can't agree on entertainment at all, and so this is like we've been married more than 20 years, and so this is always a challenge. So first is kind of a gimme that we Abbott Elementary has been in the rotation
The
since it's been
best.
on.
Love
I
it.
love I love Abbott so much. I was
It's so
anyway just
good.
cracking up last night. I love every character. I love everything about it.
Yeah. I feel, I don't know, maybe we've always had one or two good ones, but I feel like the ensemble comedy is not something that we have enough of.
Yeah. So this is great. So I feel like that's kind of the gimme. Abbott's always, sitting there in our back pockets. We're like almost caught up right now. On who we watch on Hulu. So that's one. The other one is that I'm like embarrassed to say that we are going through it for the first time.
Okay.
So the very first time, we're almost done. We have like the last season left. Parks and Rec.
Ah, love
Like,
it.
why are we watching this for the first time? But
Last season's okay,
is it?
but
I figure
such a
it kind
good
of goes downhill. I
not
mean,
quite
not it
downhill,
doesn't,
but there's
but a lot of
like
shows
an
do.
unnecessary there was like a big time jump and like for like a joke, I feel like the last or a good chunk of the final season is like half set in the future sort of.
Oh,
It's just kind of
weird,
odd,
weird.
but it
But
it's a
see, we
great
didn't
show.
finish
It's one of my
Community for like a
favorites.
weird one like that. But also, we had watched like maybe 2 or 3 episodes. The last time I was out in Pasadena at the Fuller campus, someone was like, oh my goodness, whatever, because it's the town hall is the
Yeah,
facade of the town hall in Pasadena, which of
nice.
course I've walked past a bazillion times, and now whenever I look at it, I can't stop. I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah. So Parks and Rec again. I love Chris Pratt in Parks and Rec, like,
I loved him in that show.
I can't stop. Like, he's my favorite. Like, I will look over and my husband, who is like generally not quite like as super expressive as I am, like I'm looking over and there will be moments where he's just like tearing up, because he's laughing so much at Chris Pratt. So that's one. And then segue from Parks and Rec, like every other American my age, probably, we are watching Severance.
I was wondering if that was going to come up. Okay, I need to catch up.
No, so this is what happened for us with Severance, because like I said, we cannot watch anything together. It's been this way for 100 years. We've gone through different seasons, when like cooking shows were the thing, like there were a few that we could find, like we
Bake
watched
Off's a fun,
Chopped, or
easy
stuff like
watch.
that. Yeah. When travel shows were big, we used to do that, but we just, anyway, we can't. I will tell you what the difference is. I think you'll appreciate this as an entertainment guy. What we have identified, and we did this years and years ago, is what we identified is that my husband in entertainment, in basically all forms, book, movies, whatever, TV shows, likes escapism. And I like real life. And so it is very difficult for us to find something that
Yeah,
we
we're
can
kind of
really
opposite. My wife and I are kind
enjoy.
of opposite. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I
yeah.
like both. I like escapism, but I also, I don't know, I like a full experience.
Yeah. So it's a very odd thing. So it's very difficult for us to find something together. So I was probably around the first of the year, like going through the budget. You have like all these subscriptions, right? Everybody has all these subscriptions to pay for. And I'm like, we have not watched one thing on Apple since Ted Lasso. I'm like, why am I still paying for this?
Recommendation here for Shrinking if you haven't.
Okay, everyone says that. My husband couldn't do it. And so I was like, I think I probably could have, but yeah, he could. We
Because it's
watched one
too
episode.
heady and real. Because I mean,
I, th-
it's about therapists and they do deal with stuff, but it's very funny.
I,
But
th-
yeah,
I thought I could do it. He watched one episode and was like, no. So I was like, we literally have not watched anything on Apple since Ted Lasso. Why am I still paying for Apple TV? Like this makes no sense. This is dumb. So I literally cancel our subscription to Apple. We're laying in bed. My husband's on his phone and he says, oh my goodness, everyone's talking about Severance. I think I would like to watch Severance. And as I was canceling the subscription, 8 hours before that, of course, what comes up on the main Apple TV page? An ad for Severance. And I'm like, I could totally watch Severance. And so then I'm like, well, crap. Now we have something that we have independently said we could watch.
We've
got to watch this.
$8.99 or $9.99 a
That's
month or
exactly
whatever.
right.
That's
So,
funny.
I had a few days left before the subscription was going to lapse. And I said, why don't we try it this weekend? We have a few days. If we'll watch the first episode, if we think this is something we could get into, then I'll undo the cancellation or whatever. So we're not caught up yet. They just dropped the season 2 finale. We are not quite there yet. I will say this. It was very slow for me. So
That is what I've been
that
hearing from people who are actively watching the second season. That is the feedback I've been hearing, but I have heard a lot of people say the finale lands the plane well, but that is kind of hard if you're watching a show going, where is this going?
I hope so. What part of what it has been, and I'll wrap this part up. Part of what it has been for me is that my husband enjoys it so much because it is, sci-fi. And so he really likes it. And the parts that creep me out, because it is creepy. I mean, it's for sure creepy.
Oh yeah,
and
no,
I don't
super
love
surreal. Yeah.
I don't love creepy. But I have been cracking myself up. Like for the whole first season, I cracked myself up. Like every time we ended an episode, I was like, the writers have no idea where this is going. I would just tell him, I'm like, I'm just telling you, they have no idea. Like they're acting like they do, but they don't, because there's nothing in here that makes sense. And it really wasn't until like halfway through the second season, I was like, they might have a clue like on one of these lines, but I'm not convinced.
Excited.
Like
I'm excited to dive
convinced.
in one day. I hope they get to tell their whole story, and I'll get to it when I get to it.
Well, I hope you like it. I mean, let me know. I'd be real, like, message me and let me know what you think if you get to watch it. The last thing I'll say on it is I think the reason why so many people are watching it, right, is it is this very intriguing premise. Yeah. It is a very, very intriguing premise that we've probably all have, it's not hard to imagine ourselves maybe, or something with the premise. So yeah, so I'm like every other, like I said, like every other American my age, I'm watching Severance right now.
Well, I will check that out one day. I'll be rapid fire here. We semi recently on the show covered an Iranian film called Taste of Cherry by Abbas Kiarostami, and the guest on that episode encouraged me. I've been wanting to independently check out more of his stuff, so he's got a series of like an unofficial trilogy around the city of Coker called the Coker Trilogy, and the first film in that is called Where is the Friend's House, and I recently watched it and loved it. It is I've seen thousands of movies. I've never seen a movie that mixed like a very like anxious, tense vibe with such like tender-hearted sweetness. Like it's like the movie is an evening in this boy's life where he is trying to return some homework to a friend, because if his friend doesn't, his friend who lives in a neighboring village, the teacher like is kind of targeting his friend in the classroom, and if his friend doesn't get his homework done, he's going to get expelled from school. And he accidentally takes his friend's notebook home, and he's like, oh, like he can't do his homework now because I have it. So he's like on foot walking to this other town to try to find his friend's house to give him his homework. And it was a really special movie. I liked it a lot.
Oh, that does sound great. I'm envisioning it right now. I love it.
I think that's on Max and Criterion Channel if anybody has that. And then I'm listening to Bernie Sanders' audiobook, Our Revolution. It's very good and frustrating based on our reality that we're living, but it's really good. Still trying to get Senator Sanders on the show one day, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
We'll
that'd be
see.
great.
And then I'm also on my, well, maybe it's only my second full rewatch. I've watched it all the way through one time, and I've watched various parts of it several times, but I'm doing a complete series rewatch on The Sopranos right now. That's very fulfilling.
I have never seen an episode of The Sopranos. That
I
feels really
mean,
hard to say.
it's, you got to know what you're getting into. The
Right, right.
content is what it is, but it's a incredible show.
Yeah. I
All in
mean,
all,
classic.
it's maybe, I could maybe say it's the best television show of all time. It
Wow.
easily top 3, if not
Wow.
the number 1 for
Wow.
me. But also, like, I kind of think nearly objectively, and that is like American and British television. Like, I don't know, maybe there's an incredible series somewhere else I've never heard of, but I think it's easily top 3 things that's ever been done in American television. It's astounding.
What are you loving about it in the rewatch?
In the rewatch, I am, because I've watched the first 3 seasons a number of times, and I watched it all the way through once. This time, it's hilarious. It's so funny. Every episode, there are so many jokes that, like, I remember laughing some when I watched it before, but the writers are so good, and it's so funny. It's a hilarious show.
Do you think you didn't notice as much the first time because you were caught up in the plot? Like, was it
Definitely. Yeah.
like
Because it's very
complicated and
well
you're
written.
you're
Not
right.
complicated. It's honestly, see, like, The Sopranos really is about America and family. Like, in the very first
Mhm.
episode, it's not a spoiler. Like, therapy is a big part of the show. And the main character, Tony Soprano, like, his dilemma is he feels like he's getting in. Like, and this was actually, it's a very interesting show. Maybe one of a very few, if not the only one. It started in 99 and was like set in the real world. So like there was a pre and post 9/11 in the show, and it dealt with very real like American anxiety themes. So
Wow.
like that was really interesting. But like in the very first episode in 99, he's like, I kind of feel like I'm getting in on the tail end of thing and everything is kind of going downhill. Like I make more money. Like his dad was in the life. He's like, I make more money than my dad. I have a nicer house than my dad, but like the loyalty is changing. Like with DNA, like we can't get away with all the things we used to. Like the country's debt and the wars and all this stuff. It's like it kind of feels like what's even the point of any of this anymore? And like that
Wow.
was in the pilot episode. So it's very
Wow.
much about like the American experiment, but also with a lot of fun crime drama as well.
Oh my goodness. I feel like you sold me on The Sopranos, maybe in part because I actually graduated high school in 99. So I feel
Nice.
like thinking it would be like real life. I'm like, that's like the kind of the beginning of my adulthood. I wonder how I would relive that now, 25 years later or whatever. No, that's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
it's I've always loved it. I mean, being an Italian American, there's a lot of the show that has sentimental value to me in
Mm-hmm.
ways, and especially now that like Jim's gone, like that's just kind of every now and then that'll just hit me. Like he was an incredible actor, and I mean, he did great movies. Like James Gandolfini made great movies, but with Tony Soprano, he put like 86 or 87 hours on screen. Like his best movie, like you have a movie that's 2 hours and maybe he's in like 70% of it. Who knows how much screen time he has? He has like, he's a lot in every episode, and there's like
Right.
86 or 87 episodes. So like
Good night.
it's just so massive. But yeah, it's wonderful. I love it. I'm enjoying it very much.
Good deal.
Well, Alexis, it was great having you back.
Thanks,
You're
Philip.
welcome back
Thanks.
anytime. And feel free to send me recs for, I mean, you're doing weekly guests. Anybody you think that I would be interested in or
Ooh. Yeah.
jive with, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. I will do. Yeah, I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around these next several recordings that I have coming up. But now that I'm like, oh, the offer is there, the opportunity is there, then I will definitely keep you in mind and send some things your way if I think it would, yeah, jive with the substance. It's great.
Well, yeah, appreciate that. And yeah, just always good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me back, Philip. It's so good to be here.
Well, that was a wonderful time catching back up with Alexis. I'll have links to her feeds and her show in the show notes. Check it out. Follow her show if you haven't. Really wonderful stuff every week. Deep dives on all sorts of topics with wonderful, smart, and engaged people. So go check out her work. If you're newer to the show and you haven't yet, follow and subscribe and such. If you're not operating a motor vehicle, we'd love it if you opened up that podcast app. Either hit the 5-star button, or if you're listening on Apple, take a minute, write a sentence or two as a review, and it helps people find the show. If you have a couple bucks and want to support the show, you can do that on Cash App at $the Substance Pod, and we appreciate everybody who does that. All right, so trying to wrap this up quick here. Should be back in your feed next week with another substantive cinema episode. I've been your host, Philip Marinello, and we will see you next time on The Substance.